Welcome to Healing Generations, a podcast creating a dialogue uplifting the importance of healing, strengthening, and supporting our communities, and that addresses the disparities and inequities in communities of color. Healing Generations is brought to you by the Healing Generations Institute, a collaborative initiative of the National Compadres Network and the Brotherhood of Yelders. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on our new releases.
Buenas, this is Francisco Gallardo with the Healing Generations podcast, Yelder edition, brought to you by the National Compadres Network and the Brotherhood of Yelders. I want to say what's up to my gente. Thank you all for tuning in, for checking out what we have going today. We have a special episode, and I really appreciate all those that share and listen to our podcast. You know what I mean? I really appreciate it. You know, I want to remind you, you could always give some feedback if you want to. You just have to go to hgp@compadresnetwork.org. Again, it's hgp@compadresnetwork.org. And as you know, when we get started, we like to do things old school style. You know, we want to make sure we ask permission to the four directions, all our ancestors in those four directions. You know, it's really important that we recognize this. Take a little time out of our day to recognize not only ourselves, but all the elements that contribute to our lives. So I want in your mind, I want you to, you know, if you have the opportunity, you could close your eyes and think about that east direction. This east direction is the direction of the men. It's our grandfathers, our fathers, you know, our brothers, our sons, our primos, our tios, you know, our uncles, our hood uncles too. We want to remind ourselves of all the people that contribute to our lives, you know. Sometimes they come with beautiful blessings and sometimes they come with trauma, you know, but we want to recognize that and bring that into the room. And then we turn around to our left and we think of our LGBTQ relatives, you know, the things that they're going through. You know, they're under fire daily, weekly, but they bring so many beautiful blessings to us in the way they are, the way they conduct themselves in a good way. You know, we want them to be protected and recognized for the contributions they give to our community. And as we face that west direction, we think of all the mothers, you know, the grandmothers, the mothers to be. You know, we want to think about our sisters, our tias, our hood tias, you know, think about them in our lives, our daughters, our granddaughters, you know, all the beautiful things that women bring in our lives, you know. We want to recognize all the trauma that they face too and hold them up, you know, do our best to recognize that and give them the palabra, the voice to share their experiences in a good way, you know, make positive changes in our community. In that way, we want to honor the essence of the woman, you know. In our culture, we have many names, you know, for Tonantzin, Coahuicle, and in many traditions, they refer to Mother Earth in different ways, you know. So we want to honor all the women in our lives. And then we turn left again and we face that north direction, the direction of our ancestors. Those that lived before us, that created a way for us, survived many things, you know, colonization, family destruction, all these different things that our grandparents and our ancestors did on our behalf. They didn't even know us yet. They didn't have any idea, but they definitely wanted to make our lives a little better. In turn, we have that same responsibility. So through that, we want to honor our elders. You know, you might know somebody. You might have mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, an old tío, somebody in your community, an elder, you know. Take time out of your day to talk to them, you know, to learn, to listen to their wisdom. Even if you heard the story 4 different times, you know, maybe 5 times. Listen to those stories, listen to those teachings the best you can, you know. And maybe you need to bring them some food, you know, just to let them know that they are sacred, they're wanted, that they're cared for. You know, so we want to honor our elders in that way, and even just give them a quick phone call to check in, you know, makes them feel good and it makes you feel good too. You know, we turn left again. There's that spectrum from the very oldest to the very youngest. So in this south direction, we're honoring the children, the babies that are not even born yet, the babies that are coming into this world. We want to set a path for them that they could live in a good way. We want to honor our toddlers, our elementary school kids, our middle school kids, high school kids, and college and beyond. Even if they don't want to go to school, but they're out in the world trying to make it, whatever they're doing, we want to honor that young energy because they are the future. And we're a part of their lives, so we want them to have the best opportunities available to them, to build. And then we want to honor the sun, for what the sun represents. The sun represents hope. Every day that sun comes up, and we need that sun. We have this relationship with the sun. We need the vitamins the sun gives us. We need those things, and the sun in turn helps us and grows our food and does all the things that we need. So it's just honoring that hope and of daily life. And then we touch Mother Earth, remind ourselves that we're just a part of this ecosystem. We don't rule it. We're just a part of it. And we have to do our best to take care of her, do our best to do what we can. We can't control what everyone else does, but we want policies. We want make a commitment to take care of her the best we can in life. And then in the center, whatever you believe, I'm not telling you what to believe, but just honor the creation of life, just the miracle of life. That alone is so important because sometimes we forget how precious life is. Every once in a while we see a glimpse of that beauty. And we want to harness that today. We want to think about that in our journey throughout our lives, We always want to keep that gratitude going. It helps us, our own life, feel that, again, we're a part of it. It's not us in life. We're one. Take a deep breath. All right, gente, thank you so much for taking a little time out and thinking of that. I was burning some medicine here, some cedar, some Palo Santo, thinking about my relatives in South America and other places, I even have a piece there. It's kind of like Palo Santo, but it's from Yemen. And one of my sisters gave it to me. I keep it, I burn it every once in a while because that part of the world is struggling, just like we all are. I want to recognize our relatives in that area of the world. We want peace for them, all those kinds of things. So before we get along too long, I want to make sure we bring in Michelle. Hey, Michelle, how you doing?
Hello. Doing well. I hope everybody else is doing well, too.
Yeah, thank you so much, for doing all what you do. I just want to make sure the listeners understand, not only is Michelle a podcast host here, but she also does a lot of stuff that a lot of people don't get to see, but it's really the engine. You know what I mean? If you think about your car, everyone looks at the outside, but they realize what's making it go, and that's what she does. So I'm just going to turn it over to you so we can get started for today. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. And we're so excited with this guest that we have today, Amaya Noguera, who we've been in community for quite some time now. And I know we've been trying to get this podcast going for quite some time now. So I'm glad that we made it here to this point, that you're here again, sharing space with us. And so with that, we'll get started. So I'll let you introduce yourself. Amaya, can you share a little bit about who you are, your people, your roots, and the path that has brought you to where you are today?
I say thank you so much, both of you. Michelle, thank you for that warm welcome. And thank you, Cisco, for kind of laying the foundation for us to have a good conversation today. As you mentioned, my name is Amaya Noguera. My full name, though, is Amaya Noguera Mujica, but I'm recently married, so it's Amaya Noguera-Jenkins. So it's my first time sharing my new name in a space like this, right? But just as I think about who am I and who I want to share with you all today is I am a representation of all my family, all my loved ones, and all the people that have poured into me. I am a mother of 4 children. I am a daughter, and I am very proud to serve the community, and I've been serving the community in a variety of ways. Whatever way fits best in the moment is what I like to say. But I have an opportunity to share space with people like you all often, because the work that I have been called to and the work that I've been drawn into has been around healing, because of what I've gone through in my life, right? And I am, as I mentioned, the daughter of two very incredible people, Patricia Rocio Batuonem Mujica, who has passed away. That's my mother, and my father, Pedro Noguera. And some of you may know his name. You may not know my mom's name. And like you, Michelle, she often did a lot of work behind the scenes. She was an avid organizer, revolutionary. Both of them were very active, politically active and involved. And I start with them because it's important that I start with their story and how my origin story with them, because the rest of my life won't make sense. While they were married for about going on 25 years, they had a very unique, non-traditional relationship where what drew them together was their commitment to the work and serving the people. And so I was born into a home that was rooted in serving and servitude. I was born on 45th and West in Oakland, California, and was raised in North Oakland, South Berkeley, in the 80s and 90s. And I was born into a family, as I mentioned, my father and mother, revolutionaries and very, very active. I was raised in a family and in a community where my tias and tios weren't always blood, but just like people who looked out for me, cared for me, loved on me. And if you know anything about Oakland and you know anything about the 80s, crack was running rampant through the streets. Mm-hmm. And so I was raised at a time where a lot of my peers were raising themselves. And my parents were very young. They were in their 20s, early 20s when they had us. And my mother, not being a citizen of this country, they really only got married for the logistics of getting back into the States, right? Like, it's just like, we got to sign this little piece of paper. So it was never done like the Disney movies, right? Which is what I used to think like it was supposed to be. Mm-hmm. Like, why can't my parents just be like the regular people in Disney and have this like traditional home? It was very like organic, if you will, mm-hmm. Right? No rose-colored lenses. What you see is what you get. And with that, at times, my mom working multiple jobs, being a bus driver, parent organizer, working for the housing development. My father, again, being young, he was in school. So we were going to school with him. People would tell me all the time, don't you know your dad wrote this thing? I'm like, hell no, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what he wrote. I see him on the computer, but like, I don't know, like my lived experience was not what other people experienced in terms of what they saw. And I have just a wide, vast, extensive community that I come from in North Oakland, South Berkeley, that like really raised me, rooted me, and grounded me in values of like just love for our people, love for who I am, being Black and Latina, my mother being Peruvian, my father's family being Jamaican and Trinidadian. However, there was a disconnect because Peru is, one, super far, right? So we didn't have family coming in and out. But two, because racism is alive and well. And so, my mother, when she decided to marry my father, she got cut off from her family. And it severed ties between myself and my older brother from my Peruvian side. But it was very important to my mother that we knew who we were, knew who we are, that we remain rooted in this very mixed identity and space where people will try to put us in boxes and put us in places, but that we are very clear to try to define ourselves, right? Because we are ever evolving. We are not a final product. We are changing and growing. Mm-hmm. And, so I like to think that I carry all of these experiences and people with me. But, sometimes you don't always get that, with my introduction or with my title or with my, in the ways that I might carry myself. So I'm trying to do better. I want my mama to be seen. I think people associate me with my dad, maybe my face. We look alike. But I'm so much more than that. Like I was loved on by hood uncles and hood aunties all my life. I was, in fact, my husband and I were just talking about it. We grew up in the same neighborhood, and his cousin and I were best friends growing up. And so I grew up in his house, his grandma's house. Right. His grandmama helped. She was one of my other mom. Right. She caretook for me. She made sure I was fed every day. She made sure that because my parents were working and they were in the community. Right. There were always people who looked out for me and brought me into their family, too. And it just is not by accident that my husband and I wound up together, because I've always been a part of his family, whether he, he recognized it or not, and same. But where we come from is nothing, it doesn't exist anymore in the physical sense, right? Gentrification has changed our lives, uprooted us in a lot of ways. And the path has led me to, both a blessing, right? Where I got a job that helped us to kind of root ourselves, my husband and I and our family, our 4 kids. But also because the reality is Oakland pushed us out 3 times, and we weren't allowed to stay there because we could not afford it, working 2 jobs and, just doing our best. So I don't know if that fully answers the question, but I would say that was on my heart today.
Thank you for sharing that.
So what teachings and tradition from your culture, your familia, your lived experience guided your healing journey? And, this could include music and the experience, like a lot of times in life, we're just doing the best we can with what we know at the time. But sometimes there's little nuggets that kind of kept us sane through the tough times, What were those things for you?
So I brought up my mom. I'm going to talk about her quite a bit today. My mom was a salsera, right? And she was a real musician, percussionist. And her first teachings for me that I remember clear as day were around music and dance, and specifically the drum, and how the drum is medicine. And we have to stay connected to the drum. And she could hear a rhythm and play it, and without seeing the person play. She just had this connection to music and rhythm that I always wanted. I just admired her so much. And as a result, she always insisted that my brother and myself always were in the arts, and specifically in Afro-centered arts. So if I wanted to do any kind of dance, I had to go with West African dance first. Or she always was involved in spiritual dance, right? So Afro-Brazilian, Afro-Cuban, Afro-Peruvian, because she recognized the relationship between the rhythm and the movement. And she would do both, right? She would be with the percussion, and then she'd switch and she would do dance. But she always told us that was her medicine. She would go crazy if you wouldn't let her dance, if you wouldn't let her play. And so I lost my mom very young, a week after I turned 21. And it broke me, y'all. It really rocked me to my core, because not only did I lose her, it wasn't like an abrupt separation. It was a slow decline. But it felt really fast, right? Because she got sick with cancer, and then we became really clear, she was not going to make it. And then it became even more clear how valuable she was for our family, and all the teachings and all of the things that she had for us, the medicine that she provided us, that was just going to be lost. And I just kept asking her, what do I do when life throws me through crazy stuff? How do I stay centered? And she said to remember the music, keep dancing, stay close to the drum, But beyond that, to like just keep my ancestors close, keep, that our relationship won't go away. It just will change. And to look for her in all these different things. So hummingbirds really remind me of my mother, my connection to nature. She was a woman of the earth. Like, she worked the earth. She knew how to plant and grow. We had abundance in our backyard. We didn't always have stuff in the cupboard, but you could go outside and pick you a little cherry tomato or get you a lemon or something, a plum from the tree. And she taught us the value of that and of family and of staying close to my elders. She taught me the value of having people that I trust really close to me because, she said, who can check you, Amaya? Like, who has the permission and the authority to check you in your life, right? When I'm gone, who will that be? Yeah. And I had to really think about that because I used to not, you couldn't tell me nothing. Okay, it was it was one of those things. And so I've had in my journey of becoming an adult and trying to do an adult and become a mom without my mom, I've just been staying close to the music, staying close to the rhythms, keeping elders that I trust around me who can check me, who I believe when they check me with love. And that I really try to stay connected to the earth. So I've recently grown a cream thumb. You may be able to see some of my plants. To remain connected to my mother. And then deeper than that, just having a spiritual practice and spiritual practices that help my spirit feel good and feel at peace. So that might be baños, right? So when I feel heavy, I get hot-headed. And that's always been a thing in my life is like I got anger, temper, rage. They would call me the fireball. So I gotta like cool myself, cool my head. I do a lot of things to try to calm myself. But I would say just being very trying, because I listen, it would be a lie to say I do it all the time. But I really try to be disciplined about just checking in with myself, and if I recognize I'm not where I feel I should be or I don't feel comfortable, just trying to go do the things that I know will feed my spirit and help keep me connected to the people like my mother who I know still got me.
I really appreciate what you said because my dad died when I was 21 as well.
Wow.
And sometimes when I miss him, I listen to his music that he listened to as a kid, and it brings me right there, like, and I never know when it's going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, it just comes upon me, and I try to channel my dad, through the music. It's really the only way I have, to really connect with them. So that really connects with me. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And with me too, I appreciate you bringing up even from the beginning, just honoring everyone that you are connected to, and especially your mother, because like you said, the last thing that we're given is our dads, and that's how we are known, who we are known for. And so just putting and centering and putting first your mom, and even in the teachings, right, that I think our mothers are always like that center, the people who keep us, hold us grounded. And I also relate with what you mentioned about the music, because I'm also a dancer. I don't know who I got it from, to be honest, because maybe it was both my parents. I do remember them dancing and being very lively at like whatever party they would take us to growing up. But I enjoy performing, and I also really love salsa and a lot of Caribbean flows, which is why I think my journey took me to the East Coast. But I remember during that time being one of the few people of like Mexican ancestry where I was. I had a hard time staying rooted in who I was. All like I would hear was salsa, bachata, reggaeton. But over here I grew up with like rancheras, cumbias, and banda, and no one knew who that was, like what that was. No one listened to that. And but listening to that would always bring me back home and just kind of like keep me rooted in who I was, and it would remind me of my parents. And similar to how now the way that I stay connected to my grandparents is listening to boleros. And similar to you, I'm trying to also grow a green thumb so that I can stay connected to my abuelita's medicine, because she was very much connected to the plants. And so I think as we get older, we also come to those realizations of like, and we go back, right? We're trying to go back to the root, and we start making other or integrating other practices that keep us close to home and to our people and all those who raised us. So thank you for sharing that. It really took me back. But what I wanted to ask or transition into is, how are you carrying those teachings forward today, either in your own life or in how you walk with others in their healing path?
Thank you, Michelle. And thank you for sharing, both of you, about just your own, your relationship to your parents, whether you lost them or they're still here. It really helps, because sometimes, I'll start tearing up. I talk about my mom regularly, but I don't know, like you said, when it'll come up. And for me, that's been hard, really challenging to be in a role. Shortly after my mother passed away, I found myself in a role where I was being asked to lead young youth, who were getting in trouble in school, and they were on the path to at-risk youth or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I struggled because I felt like a hypocrite. Everything I was telling them wasn't real with me. I was trying to guide them in a right way, but I felt so disaligned and not aligned with myself and where I was at. And it really was hard for me the first few years after losing my mom, because I lacked that direction. And it took me a few times falling on my face and just being in a position where I just kept saying, I don't know how I got here. And I had mentors and not just mentors, but literally loved ones like Baba Kweli, who would look at me and say, Amaya, you're not a victim, though. You are your own person. You have to kind of see your moves, right? And it was then that invitation that I got for that mirror work, and to do some serious self-reflection work. And when I started to do more mirror shadow work, or however you want to call it, I started to recognize that I wasn't carrying any of the teaching forward, because I was rejecting the teaching, because I was wallowing in my pain. And I don't mean it as in I'm judging myself for that. I'm just acknowledging that that's where I was. I was holding on the pain. And when I was finally aware of how I was holding it, I then had to make a conscious decision to release it. And so the conscious decision was for me to start to recognize what those teachings were. I had to do some reflection work, some Sankofa work, and see, my mom didn't always give me the playbook, but she lived in a way that if I was paying attention, I could go back and find those teachings. And not just her, but others as well. And so that's when I started to notice, what she did actually every Sunday, she cleaned the whole house and made sure to wipe down the front door, because she said, we need to make room for new blessings this coming week. Or she would have these little teachings that would they would go over my head. I wasn't picking it up at the time. And so in my early 20s, as a young mother and a single mother, I started to then write those things down. And again, I was still in a role where I was working with young people, but the only thing I could do was bare my soul with them, tell them I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Don't follow me. I was like, don't follow me. I can point you in a direction that I think could be helpful, but this is where I'm at. And I kept getting negative feedback. And so I started to then just write out okay, well, I'm going to try this. This week, I'm going to try a limpio, because I'm going to see how this feels. And it just started like that. And now it's become more of an actual intentional practice, but I didn't start out ready to go. Life hit me hard. I learned that if I didn't start doing it, life was going to keep thrashing me around. and that it was the only way for survival, for me to feel like I could give to my daughter in a way that I know I should, because I recognized I wasn't even handling my business, because I was neglecting myself. So I couldn't possibly care for her in the way that I really wanted to, because I wasn't even showing up for myself.
Yeah, sometimes in life, life goes past so fast that you're like, wait, what do I need to look at? And I like what you said about doing the shadow work, because I think a lot of times, helping people, I've realized that, and I did this probably as a kid, I looked for every other reason why my life's messed up, right? I never really looked at myself. And at some point I had to look in and say, man, I could really do better at this. I could do better at this, or I could try something different. And I was afraid I was going to look dumb, or, the kind of insecurities that most people have. But it's truly, if you want to heal, you kind of have to examine every piece of your life in some way, not in a judgment way, but it's just like, am I happy when I do this? Does this serve a purpose, or am I just doing it because I saw it somewhere else? And I think that's important. And it kind of leads me to this question. Like, a lot of times people talk about healing, right? But what's something that's about healing that a lot of times people don't see? What's that one thing in your life that you've noticed that sometimes people just oblivious to that? They don't see it, but something you discovered about you that really helped you overcome that, is the relationship with your parents, the relationship with your kids. Because sometimes it's like a do-over. A lot of times as young parents, we look at our kids and say, I'm going to do things differently with them. And then you realize with the second kid or the third kid, like you're getting better each time, but you know what I mean? It evolves. It just doesn't appear. It's not like you got one guidebook and you know what I mean? You're at a different point in your life. You have different means. You're different. So how you treat people, your family, that's different too. And I think some people feel stuck, like I can't ever change. But what was that for you?
I think it happens all the time, and I don't even always know like when or why, but I think people got me messed up all the time. I'll just say it like that. People got me messed up. And it's something about, I think it's out of survival. I've come across as like super confident all the time. Right. Whereas like I don't even know how I do that, but like I'm not, right. Half the time I actually am filled with self-doubt and like concern or these different things. And I think what's happened in my life is I've somehow found a way to mask everything to the point where people only see me for what it is they're like going for. Not necessarily like, you can't tell that I'm a mother of four. You can't tell that I come from North Oakland. You can't tell that I've had these different experiences, and I so am not even trying to hide it, but it's like somehow, some way, I have learned to kind of adapt and to grow a persona that it becomes not a target, becomes not someone that people are like gravitating towards. Like I actually prefer flying under the radar. I prefer not being the one people are checking for. And I think that what I've discovered about myself is I was raised in a sea of giants. My father, my mother, Baba Coel, like I have giants in my world that I've always lived amongst giants. And I think one of the things for me, especially, the patriarchy and all the things like is I'm the eldest daughter, the eldest granddaughter, and eldest great-granddaughter on both sides, my father's and my mother's side. And with that comes a lot of responsibility. I've been the family manager. Yes. I've been the family, just, and not as in nobody's capable, but just as in I just assumed a role to try to help fill in where my mother used to be. And I just think that I have struggled being like feeling seen most of my life. I have struggled with feeling like people understand me. And I have at different times, I have fought to be understood. I fought to be heard. I fought for that visibility. And then the more that I kind of understood myself, the more I realized I actually don't want to be seen. But my survival technique is to fly under the radar, is to hide, is to kind of go so that people aren't checking for me. And I think that's hard, right? Because I'm consistently in a role where I have to be up front and center, and I have to be in a leadership role. And so I think what I've discovered about myself is I still have a lot of healing to do, to re-love the woman that I am and accept I'm more than what I've been through. I am more than all of the titles. But if I'm really honest, I think I don't always step into that in a way that really honors the giants and the leadership roles that I'm in. I don't know if that answers that question all the way.
It did. Thank you for that. I think a lot of times, I mean, that's the thing. We're doing the best we can with what we know. Things change. You learn something different. I mean, I don't know how many times I woke up and feel like I don't know anything. And then other times I wake up thinking, man, I have so much knowledge. I mean, that's the beauty of life in some ways. So I appreciate your answer.
I also wanted to mention, right, that if there's something that I hear a lot in this work that we do is that healing is a never-ending journey, right? There isn't a destination to it. And at times, we're going to have to pivot or we find a new pathway. We deviate a little bit, right? It goes in circles, sideways, all around. It's the journey looks different for everybody. But if there was someone who was just starting their healing journey, and you could speak to them, what words would you want them to hear from your heart?
Yeah, I love that question. Honestly, I think what I've appreciated is people who will be with me when I'm struggling, right? So I think the biggest thing I could say would just be that, I'm here, or that, do you know who is there? Like, if me and that individual don't have a relationship and it's unnatural for us to connect and me to be there for them, etc. Like, who in your life do you have, and or what is your relationship to relationships, right? Because I think a lot of times what I see when people are starting their healing journey is it's a very isolating process initially, is what I see. And so I find that for those that struggle with that isolation, that interconnectivity is beautiful. It's a beautiful branch, right? When I was in high school, I was violated and hospitalized and was in a situation where I was being told by the people who were supposed to be helping me that I would be back, right? That they knew that they were going to see me again. And because I didn't know how to control my mouth, I didn't know how to control myself. And I made it a point that I would never be back. And that if ever I was in a position to talk to somebody who's going through something similar to what I was going through at that time, I would never, ever have that kind of arrogant attitude to them that would tell them that they wouldn't be able to get past what it was they were dealing with. That I would hopefully, God willing, speak life into them, remind them. I would want to speak to their mother's mother, their father's father, the people in their life that have poured into them, so that they could remember themselves and then try to then stay interconnected, either with a practice like gardening or talking to an elder or going and being around the babies or spending time with your nieces and nephews. Because sometimes the medicine is just as simple as reconnecting with loved ones and with people who know you, who will see you when you walk into a space and affirm you and make you feel welcome. But I do think that a lot of, at least for myself, a lot of that initial part of the healing journey is that feeling of isolation and feeling of shame. And so just really wanting to name that shame and put that bitch in its place. Excuse my language.
Yeah, I hear that. Yeah, definitely. So tell us what you're doing now and what are you moving towards in the future? What do you want to do with your education, with putting these lessons to work? You know, I got to see your relationships a little bit when we did the training for you guys, and you brought people to another training, and I seen that. You know, I see that there's a lot of people that are, you know, trying to impact our community, trying to impact in a good way, bring about change, you know, bring about healing. Because I think the best is always yet to come. If you're in a place where you're feeling good, your imagination, I mean, that's, to me, those are the best kinds of things in the community. Like, let's imagine what could be different and start moving towards that. You know, people see it and they get excited. And to me, that's what I love to do. You know, part of what our job is working in the community is not in a bad way, but we have to be dreamers. We have to share with people. You know, we have to convince them. One of my homies one time, he said, Cisco, you're a dreamer. We ain't never going to have peace. I said, yeah, we'll never have it if we don't imagine it, if we don't put it into place, if we don't do what we can to make it happen. Yeah, of course we'll never have it, but I can't be like that. You know, I need to share this vision. And so where are you going in your life, and how are you putting this to work?
Inshallah. Thank you for that question. I would say, and I say inshallah, God willing, because we don't know, right?
Yeah.
But I would say it starts at home, right? So I'm trying to clean up house. I want to make sure I have an 18-year-old who's graduating from high school, right? So all of the work I do in community, if I don't do that right, it don't mean nothing to me, right? As the daughter of two community-driven individuals, giants, as I mentioned earlier, I think it's so important that for me, everything I do externally, I got to also do internally. So I'm working on incorporating, you know, what does systems change look like in my house, right? What does systems change or culturally responsive parenting look like, right? So I think that's the first thing, is just really like ensuring that I'm living what I preach out there in the world. When I stepped into this role in 2020, it was in the middle of the pandemic. I had lost my job at the start of the pandemic, and I was doing consulting work. And it was really interesting because I felt like I was starting a coup in the Central Valley with all these parents. I was like organizing these parents to tell them and give them the game that, like, if only they knew they had the power to turn all of the schools in the Central Valley into dual immersion schools and Spanish-speaking institutions, not just monolingual schools, and that they had power. And oh man, it was awesome, but it was making no money, y'all. It was making no money in the pandemic, and it was like, yo, we are stressed. And again, as I mentioned, we were getting pushed out. So I landed this job, and I was like, damn, I don't know how I got in. I had 6 interviews. It was crazy, but I landed this job, and the only thing I could think to do was make sure that any mental health initiative that was focused on Black people, that it wasn't rooted in our trauma. That was my number one goal. I said, we can acknowledge the trauma, we can deal and address with the trauma, but we're not rooted in there. We are so much bigger than our wound. And so my first order of business was to like transform language, right? Because like you said, Cisco, like if we can't envision it, if we can't imagine it, then what are we doing, right? So to me, language also can be restrictive because you can draw associations and you can kind of put a cap on things. And so it was so important to me to have like affirming language and recognizing that our pinnacle was not that, yes, somebody received a therapy, but the pinnacle was Black joy, was medicine rooted in cultural reconnection, that the medicine was redefined, right? And I feel like, you know, we've been getting some hits federally, statewide, and others. And I don't know what the future has in store for this program, for myself. But I do know that whatever I do, it will be rooted in healing work. It will be continuing on this community transformation work. Again, I try never to stay static in that, like, the job does not define me, my role of work. However, this job has been phenomenal in my ability to make change on a larger scale that I hadn't been able to make before. So I'm recognizing both the power, the privilege, the positionality, but I want to do it well. I want to use it well, right? I'm in school right now simply for the purpose of being able to take words like yours and put it in some language that your Dr. Cisco, right? Like, it's put the respect and recognition on the teachings that are here, right? Like, let's redefine our own medicine. And I'm not the only one, right? There's lots of different people doing this kind of redefinition, and how can I use my position where I'm at to make sure that, because to me, it's not just a job. It's not just what I do externally. It's how I live. So it's more so like, how do we extend these lived practices to beyond our homes or even smaller communities, but be more visible and reflected in the way that we care for others, the way that we define care, the way that we try to transform our communities. So no simple answer, but just say it would be a combination of trying to incorporate all those things and bring them with me. And I'll say in art. Art has to be central.
I appreciate that.
I love that. Amaya, if people wanted to get involved in the work that you do, how could they connect with you? How can they learn more? And if there are any other organizations that you are involved in that you want to shout out, could you tell us a little bit more?
Yes, I'm so juiced to tell you guys. So real quick, I won't take too long with this one, but the program that I have been managing for the past 5 years is called the Community Responsive Wellness Program. And it was actually started because of Stephon Clark being killed by the police here in Sacramento. And it was a recognition from the city and the county to say that, you know what, we actually don't have the systems in place to support Black communities in the way that we thought we did. So here, we're going to go ahead and give the community a certain amount of money that will be used to hold healing circles and, other healing-centered activities, right? And so that started in 2020, and it is a coalition of 4 different community-based organizations here in Sacramento. In the north, in Del Paso Heights, we have Roberts Family Development Center. In the south, we have Rose Family Creative Empowerment Center. In the central area, the Midtown area, we have On Track Program Resources. And lastly, we have Improve Your Tomorrow that works at 5 different school sites throughout Sacramento and works directly with youth, case managing over 100 youth on their caseload. So my role was really just to bring 4 different organizations that have already been doing this work for a number of years together to work collaboratively on it. And it's been challenging, right? Like, it's not easy. It's no simple fix because the moment you even start combining resources and start trying to work together, the biggest recognition is what we're still lacking, which are other resources beyond what our community-based organizations have. And so I've been tasked with to go find therapists, go find culturally responsive healers and bring them in and create a network where we have access to different kinds of healing modalities. We get exposed to different approaches to healing for our people so that we're well-versed, we're multilingual in healing, right? That is the goal. And I would say, you can connect with us on our website. It's communityresponsivewellness.org. And unfortunately, our funding is coming to an end in June. However, those organizations, they still receive funding. So they are still continuing that healing work and that advocacy work to ensure that the communities have what they need. Unfortunately, we don't get that added support to bring everyone together to do it in a cohesive way. However, they will continue that journey, and I'm around. Y'all can find me on all all the platform.
Thank you. I mean, one is hopefully they maintain an unsupported network, because to me, even though it's not supported, relationships have a cost, but you could do it. You could just make time and energy and be together when you need to. You know, those relationships that you've been managing they developed in various ways. I'm sure I could see the love there. So it's like, how do they keep the urgency there where it doesn't rely on funding? Because when it's organic, I think about like the Black Panthers didn't get funded. They didn't get funded. The Crusade for Justice didn't have a grant. That's what they did. The Young Lords in Chicago. Like, we have to go back to some of that. You know, it doesn't have to be supported. It needs to be supported by the community, right? We're the ones that make the change. So I just want to say thank you for that. You know, thank you for coordinating. And, you know, our mental health, and not only in the African American community, in the immigrant community, period, people of color. Like, I feel like sometimes the only way we survived is just keeping our head down and pushing through. But at some point, you know, we need to speak out loud to each other. You know, I got you. I am not just telling you that I'm walking with you. What do we need to do, you know, to increase and build on one another? You know, I think that's so important. So again, I can't express with just words of how inspiring it is. You know, I'm glad that we met. You know, Baba Kweli talked about you so much. I thought I already knew you. You know what I mean? Just so you know, Baba Kweli always lifted you up in a good way. And I appreciate that. You know, I know we're going to work together. You know, that part of California to me is so important. There's so many parallels to that area. I mean, that's the seat of power in the state, but there's problems just out the backyard right there. You know what I mean? Like that to me just shows the need. And, you know, I'm tired of our people feeling like we're not enough. You know, we're not enough to save. We're not enough to fund. We're not enough for this and that, you know, and that we need to champion ourselves, you know, and I appreciate that, you know, I appreciate the commitment, not only to yourself, but to your community and ultimately your family. You know, that's all I want my kids to look at me and say, my dad did his best. You know, he tried, made a lot of mistakes, but he still worked hard at it. You know, that's important. That kids see that. And yeah, it's a balance. You know, I've not always been good with that balance, but you know, when we get to our age, we start to see what's more important and things like that. So I want, again, just say I appreciate you and you know, thank you for taking out time out of your day just to share and have a really good conversation. You know, I want to remind the relatives, you know, when we're talking about healing, again, it's those 4 domains. You know, we have to think about what are we doing emotionally? Like, how are we supporting ourselves in that way? You know, taking time. Some people, you know, they meditate. Some people just listen to some good music, you know, just that's the way they meditate. And, you know, even our mental health, what are we doing to push ourselves to learn more, you know, because sometimes we get stuck in a rut and we think if this doesn't happen, it's not going to change. But the beautiful thing, you know, that I've learned from this community work is there's so many ideas. Just be open to it. And even if it's not right now, write it down. And the opportunity, I've done that where I wrote this thing down and 5 years later, the opportunity arrives for me to pull that piece of paper back out and say, let's do this. And I know it worked for me. And the other one with physical health too, you know, sometimes we push ourselves because we think, oh, it's just a little thing, but we have to take care of ourselves, you know, just, and then, you know, we have things, sometimes sickness happens to good people. It just does, you know, and some people, they struggle with that because they think, did I live a bad life? Why did this happen to me? But sometimes it just happens, you know, and how do we build from that? And ultimately our spiritual health, you know, and I'm not talking about religion so much. I'm talking about just what fills your cup up when you're just empty, you know, what gives you purpose in life. If that's organized religion, if it's walking in nature, whatever it is, you know, Lean on it when you need it. Don't treat it like a luxury. Treat it as a necessity that you need it. Not that, oh, if it'd be nice if I could take more walks next to the beach or to the walk in the mountains, Even at the training we did for you, I was telling one of the young ladies there that if you look at the mountains are beautiful. Everyone goes there and they feel so, has this serenity feeling, like, just feeling of just nature, the sounds, the breezes, the smells, all the things that you feel in nature. But you got to remember, when that was created, it was violent. When that was created, it was a turmoil and flames and lava and this and that. But today we see the beauty. We don't see that pain no more. And we just remember we're like the mountains. Like, yeah, maybe we've been through some things, some more than others. I've had a tough life, but I've met people with way tougher. I'm thinking, gee, how did you do that, man? Like, I had a tough life, but wow, so there's always somebody who had it worse than us, and in some ways, especially across the world, definitely, like what's going on in Gaza, what's going on in Iran, what's going in just countries right here in Peru and Mexico and in the Caribbean. And they're facing hard times. Like, we have it hard here, but nothing like other people. And so it's just remember that healing. I want to thank you for sharing your points of view and your journey with us, because it's very inspiring to me. Thank you. I can't, again, it's hard to express just in words. If we're here, I'd be hugging you right now, and just appreciating you.
I'm so grateful to have been here with you all today. I think you touch on so many things that I agree. I think the more I've learned in life, the less my hardships matter, in the sense of Cuba matters right now and Gaza matters right now. And I really do think it gives perspective in a way that I didn't have always. So thank you for saying that. I think it's important. Context is important. And I just appreciate you all making space for this, right? Because again, when you started with the question, I think it was, sharing a little bit about myself and who I am. Initially, I was going to say I'm nobody. Like, I am nobody in relation. I'm in relation to all of these people. And I thought, how dare I say that, right? So I had to kind of check myself and collect it. But it is so important. Context is important. Who we are is in relation to all of the things and how we move. So thank you for making space for this.
Thank you. Thank you as well. I also wanted to share my appreciation and gratitude. Cisco said it very well. And I think also closed us off with a really great reflection to wrap up this conversation. But thank you so much for making the time to be here with us again and sharing space with us and sharing about your journey and also all the beautiful wisdom and teachings within that as well.
Relatives, I just want to share that, again, if you find some enjoyment in this podcast and you want to share it, please share it with people. Let people know what's going on. That's how we increase this movement, by having these platicas, having these conversations and really getting to know each other and sharing our experiences, because one thing, when I started changing, I realized I'm not alone. There's a homeboy in another community far away from me who's going through the exact same thing as I'm going through. There's a kid somewhere, there's this, that we're never alone, and I know sometimes it's hard to see that when you're not feeling good, but I just want to remind you of that. And if you could, not only just share our podcast, but if you could rate it, whatever you feel, however it touched you, that helps us increase our listener base. And we would really appreciate that. And if you have any suggestions, maybe you know somebody that you think we should tell their story. Every time I meet somebody, I'm like, I need to interview you. And, we have to be somewhat selective, but at the same time, there's so many powerful people. And you're one of them. Again, I just can't express how proud I am to know you. I almost feel bad I didn't invite Baba Quilly to the conversation. But me and him are going to do an episode soon to talk, again. And again, if you have some feedback, you could go to hgp at compadresnetwork.org. That's a new email for me, so I'm still struggling with it. But again, it'll be in the show notes, and please give us some feedback. And thank you again. I just want to say palabra to each and every one of you.
Palabra.
Ashe.
For more information about Healing Generations and the Healing Generations Institute, visit nationalcompadresnetwork.org and be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with our new releases.